So tonight we're talking ovulation. So what I want to tackle this evening in our time, and I will try and keep to time, is we're going to just understand what's happening in ovulation. So I know you guys are pretty much clued up on this anyway, but we could just have a little review of what's happening in the body, how we can support a nice, healthy ovulation. Because even if we're not trying for babies, we do want a nice, healthy ovulation to have that lovely cyclical flow. And then we're going to talk about the work we can do in this summertime to create a better autumn and winter. So we talked a little bit about that in springtime energy in the follicular phase. Summer's even more opportunity just to take care of ourselves. So, but what I'm going to start with is just as we've done. Oh, computer's going a bit wild. Technology's not my favourite this week. I'm going to talk about what's going on. So, what's going on with ovulation? So, it's summer energy. I've written spring energy there. My goodness, I was doing so well. So the mantras we might be looking at in the ovulation phase is, I can do anything and everything, but I don't have to. I am a creative being and I am full of possibilities. So it's very positive, very outgoing. The divine vibe to this area is the creatrix, the mother, and the artist. So even if we're talking, to women who haven't got children, so some who are watching this on record might not be mums, the mother element of it can be mothering anybody, mothering yourself, mothering your friends, your family. And the creatrix isn't just about creating babies, it's about creating whatever it is you wish to create. So it's the summer vibe, and from an Ayurvedic point of view, we are in Pitta season, which is fire. I am a Pitta dosha, so my natural state is fire. It explains a lot, doesn't it? And my husband would definitely agree. So Pitta is all about fire. So what's going on in the body? Obviously, all of this is for interpretation. It's not all perfect to each person, but we're roughly saying ovulation is between days 14 and days 18. We did mention last week that quite a few people can have much later ovulations up to day 20. So it's important, if we're wanting to get in touch with our ovulation a little bit more, to be tracking this stuff. And I'm going to go a little bit through later on about how to track your ovulation. So ovulation only lasts between 12 and 24 hours. It's pretty quick. And that basically is how long it takes for the egg to be released and for it to be fertilized and start traveling down the fallopian tube, or not fertilized and travel down the fallopian tube. So it depends on where we're at and what we're doing. If you are trying to get pregnant, for those that would be, you'd be aiming to have daily sex from 3 days before ovulation. So again, this is where we want to be tracking. If you're trying to go for no babies and doing the natural method, avoid those days like the plague. Those are not the days for you. Just chill out, go see a movie, do anything other than having sex in those days. So that's the peak days. In terms of living cyclically, we count the ovulatory period as the day after ovulation begins until approximately 4 to 5 days afterwards. So your summer sits at the start of once you've ovulated for the next sort of 4 to 5 days. Up until that point, you're in the spring time. And like I said, it can vary up to day 20 a little bit later as well. At the end of your spring phase, rising estrogen levels trigger the release of LH from the pituitary gland, which stimulates ovulation. So when people are looking for levels, etc., that's often they get measured. They get their LH levels measured, etc. And then the egg is released from the follicle, and the remaining ovarian structure becomes the corpus luteum, which is responsible for secreting progesterone. It's a lot of words that for a Birmingham lass are very difficult to pronounce. So you will get this in writing just in case that sounded a little bit like Hobbit language. So we're going to start seeing progesterone basically rise once the egg is released, and progesterone does have a very different effect on the body than estrogen. So for a moon phase, we're talking full moon, which is on Friday, if anybody is tracking the moon. So you're beautiful, lit up. You can gaze up to a visible everywhere. And the dark night is dominated by this beautiful light, which really is quite appropriate when we're talking about ovulation, because you will just light up the room when you are ovulating. So how are we feeling physically? Superwoman is still in full flow. So you're going to start to see in spring, we talked about starting to feel like Superwoman. You can do everything, maybe a little bit a bit crazy, a bit too much energy, but summer you're going to just still feel usually that rush of energy into the body. So you'll still feel like running, jumping, high impact exercise, weightlifting. You'll just feel a lot more energized. And if you're going for PBs, personal bests, spring and summer, or spring and early summer, should I say, that's the time when you really want to, put the effort in there. What I would say as a caveat to that, as you go down into later summer and you're getting towards that autumn, maybe the day 2021 where you're flipping, this is where your uterus is at its largest. It's growing. So it can sort of go from this big to this big. It becomes quite heavy, and your uterus, I should have an image for this, but I might attach it to the email. Your uterus is held on to your skeletal system by two very small looking muscles. So they're very, very strong. But if you think about sort of a ball being suspended by two sort of stretchy bands, the heavier that ball becomes, the more it's going to go up and down. So if you've ever had that feeling when you're running and you're like, oh, that feels a bit heavy, or you stop running and there's a sort of almost like you've been cycling, there's a bit of an ache underneath you, it can be that the uterus has just been quite big, quite heavy, and you've just started to feel that weight. So just important to bear in mind. You might feel like going fell running if you do, but just be mindful, take it steady, and if you do start to feel that pull, that stretch around sort of the womb area, slow it down, bring it to a walk, etc. But you're less likely to be injured in this state, more energized, etc. But how are you feeling emotionally? So progesterone is the feel-good hormone. It's the mothering hormone. It's the one that wants you to be part of community and nurture and to feel loved up with everybody, your partner, your kids, person in the street. It also stimulates the GABA receptors in your brain. I didn't know this since I started researching, which are responsible for calming your nervous system down and reducing anxiety. So it really is just that magical hormone. So you've got all the energy, you're feeling really quite good, but you might find that you feel a little bit calmer than you did in spring. So this is why you can find in this little pocket of time, it doesn't seem big enough, a few days, you can really feel very productive because you've got the energy and the focus. It's the magic time. So yes, you feel very sociable and creative. You might find you start to crave smaller, more intimate settings. So rather in spring, when you're getting ready to ovulate, you might feel like going out to a bar, going clubbing, just generally being out. In summer, you'll still maybe feel sociable, but emotionally you might feel ready to have, really nice conversations with friends and family, more of a pub setting, or having people round, nice meal setting. You might find that your brain fog does seem a little bit clearer, especially post-ovulation when the progesterone starts to increase, particularly if you are in perimenopausal state and estrogen's not quite doing what it wants to do. The progesterone, if it is still flowing nicely, if you're still ovulating, then the progesterone can just feel almost like the fog has lifted a little bit. And you're like, oh, I can see. And then it comes back down. It's nice. It's a nice window. So that's sort of what's happening physically and emotionally. And I wanted to jump right into what the superpowers are, because it's all very lovely. So creation, expression, and focus. So yes, you're the triple threat in ovulation. So from a creation point of view, if you're having that sort of nice flowing cycle, you can sort of settle into a nice creative state. So like I said, you could create a baby if you wanted to in this stage, or you could create content, videos. You might be active on social media if you have creative projects like crocheting, which I've tried several times and have never been able to crack, but hopefully there are if you have, fantastic. If you're a painter, you're drawing, this is the time when you can really tap into that creative energy. Even things like cooking, doing some big batch baking and batch cooking in this time can feel really good because you're creating something, but also very good for later on in the cycle if you've batch cooked things. It's good prep. We're working with the throat and heart chakra at this point of the month as well. So what this means is that when the heart and the throat are open, you are more likely to know what you want, so what your heart desires are, and you're more likely to be able to ask for them. So a good point in the month to have meetings with bosses or with clients if you want to ask them for extra things, or ask for a pay rise or pitch a good deal. Really good time to do it because you'll also be very succinct. You'll flow nicely into it. And you can deal with people really, really well. So yeah, if you've got interviews or meetings to set up with people, a really nice time to do it, particularly when you want to make a really good impression. And then in terms of your focus, this has continued the vibe of get shit done in your spring, but almost on acid. So you can really get shit done. So if you are able to track your ovulation and find those windows where you can be super, super productive, great time to do projects, clean the house, get stuff organized. You're not going to be sort of frantic cleaning. You might clean your house later in the cycle, but you end up throwing stuff out because you're just getting angry with everything. You're less likely to do that and just have a really good clear out. Or if you are doing stuff, so I'm sort of just coming to the end of ovulation, I sat today and wrote loads of content and it just seemed to be flowing out. And I was like, just wow, this is brilliant. Long may this continue. But I know it's a small window. But yeah, you'll find it easier to just sort of sit for longer periods. Do please remember to move once in a while. Make sure you've got some alarms set on your phone or your watch though, because you can sort of go into the zone a little bit too much. So how does that resonate with you? Record again. So we've got these superpowers. So creation, expression, focus. How best can we support these? So for movement, as I said, movement can be strong. We're just remembering that just because we feel like we can do something doesn't necessarily mean we should do it. And this should be the theme of the whole part of ovulation. But just use your energy wisely. And what my PC says to me is always have one in the bank. So if you're running, feel like you could run a little bit more. If you're lifting, feel like you could do one more rep. Just always feel like you've got one more in the bank. Don't exercise to the point of exhaustion, particularly if you're not an athlete, if you're not competing in any particular Olympic sport. We don't need to exhaust ourselves. That's when you're going to feel those repercussions later on in the cycle. You probably won't feel them straight away. So yeah, go strong, but just be really smart about it. With breath work, as I said, summer is a fire time, so it's pitta energy. So what we want to do with breath work is we can cool that breath down. And we are going to do shortly a little bit of cooling breath. What we could also play with, particularly if you're perimenopausal, having some ovulation issues, it may be a little bit sort of higgledy-piggledy. You can do belly breathing or ujjayi breath. So again, we'll have a little play with these because they're not necessarily fire breaths, but they're warming and they keep that nice flow of energy through the body. So you're not overly irritating with anything that's going to create a lot of acne, a lot of fire, but you're just keeping yourself nice and warm. So it really is a bit of a judgment call. If you're feeling like you've gone through ovulation, and you've got that rise in progesterone, the cooling breath can feel quite nice, especially if you are feeling, I tend to feel hot to touch after I've ovulated. The cooling breath is great. If you are having those ovulation pains or ovulation just maybe not always happening, the warming, the belly breath and the ujjayi can come into it. So we're going to have a little practice of each of those just to see how you feel. Meditation wise, unlike the spring, you might find it a little bit easier to settle into meditation because you've got this increased sense of focusing. So meditations like candle gazing or a sense meditation, so listening to sounds and trying to hear all the different sounds you can hear, focusing on a smell, so meditating with an essential oil. Or a body scan kind of meditation, they can be really amazing because you'll just get a real deep sense that you can drop into it a lot more because you've got something to focus on and you're feeling that lovely sense of focus. So nice time to be meditating. With sleep and rest, like we said, you're going to feel more energized, but all the way through the cycle. So always through the cycle, my advice is have a set bedtime and a morning time. Try and keep to that through the whole cycle, apart from when you're bleeding, where you might actually sleep some more. But yeah, try and keep that nice sleep going. And as you get post ovulation, you might start to feel warmer. So making sure you've got a cool room. Cool room is actually always good for sleep, particularly after ovulation. Having a nice cool room, having breathable pajamas, and again, if you are feeling perimenopausal, definitely keeping the coolness in there. And then nutrition-wise, progesterone stimulates your appetite. So you might find that you want to eat more. I always want to eat more, any excuse. And as it's a pitta time, it's all about fire. So you want to really avoid alcohol, excess spices, and other digestive irritants like coffee. Sour and salty foods encourage the release of heat and the release of irritating digestive fluids. So sour and salty tastes can be quite nice. And I find that I actually crave sour and salty taste around my ovulation. You could even try cooling foods like cucumber, milk, pears, honeydew melon. And they, particularly if you have an inflamed pitta, so if you suffer from IBS or digestive issues, then those kind of cooling foods can really, really help. And like Vata, Pitta likes sweet foods like sweet potato, whole grains, things, also animal products if you have them. And these heavier foods tend to satisfy the strong appetite that you might have. So, you know, a nice big fat sweet potato is going to fill you up and last you a little bit longer than eating, you know, a chocolate bar, as much as it sounds nice. And supplements wise, similar to spring, probiotics, digestive enzymes to support digestion around this time, and just making sure, you know, you're keeping that coolness. With our massage practice, you can absolutely crack on with the womb massage. So yes, last week we went through how you can do it to yourself, so you can carry on. If you are not trying to get pregnant, you can carry on as long as you like, basically up until you bleed. We just say you wouldn't massage when you're bleeding. If you are trying to get pregnant, post ovulation, after about 3 to 5 days, we would stop the womb massage altogether. The same with castor oil. We carry on using that. Maybe if you're doing the 3 days use, 3 days off, to do a nice big full cleanse. After ovulation, you can carry on up until maybe 1 or 2 days before you expect your bleed. If you're trying to have a baby, put the castor oil away, because we just wouldn't mess around with the womb if we're trying to conceive. Aromatherapy wise, it has it's been actually shown to have estrogen levels in perimenopause women. So in theory, obviously always take everything with a pinch of salt, but always worth trying it. Lavender, going to keep you calm, reduce the stress, is important for a healthy ovulation. So if you are stressed, the first thing to shut down is your reproductive system. So lavender, just dousing yourself all of the time with lavender, trying to keep yourself nice and calm. Vetiver is a nice grounding oil. It can be a bit of a Marmite essential oil. Don't go and buy lots of it until you've actually smelt it. I love it. Some people hate it. And sometimes you can love it at the beginning of your cycle and hate it at the end of your cycle. Vetiver is very earthy. So it's a nice balance to that fire energy that you've got. So you might find in ovulation, it just really grounds you. But then later in your cycle, you might not like it. So a nice one. And I did want to mention the Woman's Balance that Neal's Yard do. So I don't normally mention the brands, etc., but it is a really lovely one. It has everything and brilliant for around ovulation and then up to your bleed as well. Woman's Balance is just lovely. You can buy just the little essential oil, pop it in your bath. Oh, just perfect. And you can also add it to your massage oil, and it's a great one to do the womb massage with as well. It's got nothing in there that really should irritate you. But if you're going to put it on your skin, just always remember, put it in a carrier oil. Do not put essential oils directly on your skin. And then with crystals, if you do like to have a little play around with crystals, moonstone, which looks like that. That's what I've got on today. Moonstone is wonderful. It brings a rich feminine energy. It's a manifesting stone. Great to get in touch with your inner creatrix. And it's great to wear around the full moon and the new moon to bring in that lovely moon energy. And Adventurine, which opens the heart chakra and helps you with feelings of abundance and wealth and growth, which just ties really nicely into that summer ovulation energy. It's brimming with natural energy, and it is the ideal crystal if you're trying to attract abundance or attract a baby if you're trying to conceive at this time. So there's lots of lovely things you can do to support yourself through there. We're going to jump now into some yoga, just so haven't bored you all to tears and keep you nice and awake. And then I'm going to come back to how you can support yourself by checking in with the inner critic. So the inner critic, I promised we'd come back to her. So here we are, we've come back to her in the summer, which is probably not where you expected her to be. So we've talked a little bit about your superpowers, being more social, being more creative. But there is a flip side to the summer. And it is particularly prevalent if you've got a very strong inner critic. And this is the tendency to people please. Do we have any people pleasers here? My name's Helen, I'm a people pleaser. Not anymore, I'm a recovering people pleaser. That's how I would describe myself, recovering. But summertime can be a time where your inner critic she's very chatty, but she's not talking to you in a critical way. She's talking to you in a very lovely way and telling you that you can do everything and that you can be everything to everybody and that you can commit to everything. This is the time in the cycle that we're most likely to agree to things that actually we don't really want to do. And it's not until the week after, when the autumn kicks in and the inner critic raises her little head again and says, well, why did you agree to that? That was stupid. You don't have the energy or the capacity to do that. So the tendency to people please in summer can be really, really high, particularly if that's one of your default settings, or if you're trying to recover from that default setting. So being really mindful of your own energy, your own diary, and your own capacity in the summer is really, really important. So as we talked about in menstruation and in follicular phase, just preparing your diary, making sure you have your list of priorities that you've come up with in your menstruation. You started working on those priorities in the spring. In the summer, you might be very tempted to start adding in new projects, particularly those that are being asked from you from other people, or that will get you brownie points with other people, will get you love from other people, or maybe they feed into the ego a little bit. This is where you're going to need to be really clear about boundaries. And what I always like to remember is if you're saying yes to something, you are also saying no to something else. So if you're saying yes to, yes, I will come to your event. Yes, I will come to that party. Yes, of course, I'll do that project that you've given me 2 days notice to do. It's no problem at all. You're also saying no to your free time, possibly time with your family, possibly rest time, well-being time. You know, the first things to go usually are the gym, the space, the reading time, all the nice things that we enjoy. So it's important to just check back in. If someone is asking you something, yeah, absolutely, I'll check my diary. What you're meaning is you're going to go and check your list that you did at menstruation and make sure that this fits in with your priorities. And some of it might do. Some of it will be like, yes, actually, that supports one of my goals. I'm going to do it. You might find that actually, no, that's not going to support what I'm wanting to do. So keeping a check of those priorities is really, really important. Another thing to watch out with, and it's very connected to the people pleasing, is fitting in. So in summer, you're more likely to try and fit in with people. So you might go to places that maybe you don't normally go to because your friends are going, or you might be agreeing to go to something that you don't really want to go to. I had a great example of this. One of my friends, me and Kate, are going to a sober rave in October, which we're very excited about. I asked one of my friends if they wanted to come. She was like, yeah, that sounds brilliant. Clearly in her summer. A week later, she was like, so is it a sober rave? And it dawned on her that she didn't really want to dance in front of complete strangers without a drink. So she's not coming. But she definitely agreed to do something that really wasn't what she wanted to do, but she wanted to fit in. She wanted to be into that in crowd. And Dr. Brene Brown, who is one of my favourite human beings on the planet, says that the opposite of belonging is fitting in. And I always try and remember that when I'm trying to like fit in with people. So that sense of belonging that we absolutely need during our autumn and our menstruation it's not fitting in, it's not agreeing and doing things that don't align with us and actually can make us feel worse and make us feel more lonely and more isolated. So always checking that you're not trying to do something just to fit in with the crowd and that you're not agreeing things because your inner critic is telling you that you should do, because she'll only blame you later on in the cycle anyway. So we try not to listen to her very much. So that's sort of the flip side of summer. Those are your things to just watch out for and make sure that we're honouring ourselves into the later part of our cycle. So with that in mind, we're going to do a nice belly breathing exercise. So I want you to really calm and relax before we finish this session. So you're just going to get comfortable. You can sit back in your chair or you can sit on your yoga mat. You can have a little recline with belly breathing. You can do it lay down as well if you really just want to be lay down. But a nice sort of little lean can be really nice. Some cushions behind you. Just make sure you've got a bit of space in the belly or you're nice and upright. And we're just going to lower or close the eyes. And if it feels comfortable, place in maybe 1 or 2 hands on your belly. It doesn't have to be the womb space. It can be higher up. I just want you to feel the movement of the belly. Moving out and expanding as you breathe in. And moving in as you breathe out. It might be a very small movement to begin with. You might even find that the breath hits a certain point and it feels like you can't breathe in anymore. Make sure the out breath is completely out. As you breathe out, squeeze the stomach muscles towards the spine. As you breathe in, try to push the belly out. Taking a few more of these. Now on your next out breath, I want you to send the breath out as much as you possibly can. Squeeze the tummy into the spine until you have no breath left. And let the body naturally fill with the inhale when you're ready. And let the breath just settle into its own natural rhythm. Blink open the eyes when you are ready.